Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it's a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalai. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you this hour as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off. Today is a special day for us here in the United States, and we would be remiss if we did not just take a moment to acknowledge that it is the 17th anniversary of the September 11th bombings. And obviously not directly related to this show in a lot of ways, but, you know, our entire production team, as we were kind of going through and getting ready to go on the show, and we were talking about different things to talk about, and one of them said, you know, I just think it would be appropriate for you to address this and just kind of to talk about it. And so we started just kind of having an informal conversation about the technology and impacts of those events 17 years ago. And one of the things that we quickly realized very early on was that open source, Linux, privacy, the importance of owning your technology, all of those things were impacted by the events that took place on September 11th. And as I was walking around today and looking at the flags that were at half-mast, it dawned on me that it extends beyond just the privacy implications. Because on September 11th, cell phone towers were knocked out of service. Emergency service personnel were unable to communicate in a lot of situations in a lot of ways. But you know what was working? Ham radio. Amateur radio. The people that own their technology, that own their infrastructure, the people that didn't rely on the cloud services, those were the people that were able to continue to communicate. And in the years, in the 17 years in the aftermath of 9/11, as TSA has gotten out of control, as border security has gotten out of control, and the invasions into our privacy and monitoring of our communications have gotten out of control, as those things have continued to happen, open source, Linux, encryption, all of those things have been there to protect your data, your privacy, and empower you. And so that's the best I can do to I guess, address this or talk about this. And obviously I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just feel like it's an important way to open the show. Again, open phones, 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Make your voice heard, become a part of the program. Neil writes into the program. We got an email, so we'll take that here. He says, "Hi, Noah. I'm a new listener of your show. One of the main reasons I found you is because I was searching for YouTube. I am tired of Windows and wanted to switch to Linux and open source due to the privacy and security. I'm currently working for an IT industry, but I'm thinking of learning perhaps C#, especially visual coding. I have some Java experience, but C# seems to be interesting in terms of finding a job in the area I live. I know that MonoDevelop is available for C#, but that is only good for core development. I want to completely remove Windows from my personal life. The irony here is that in order to learn Visual C#, I had to reinstall Windows and Visual Studio on my laptop. So it's with a heavy heart that I write into you to ask for an alternative on Linux that I can use Linux to practice my C# skills. I'm loving the Ubuntu and Ubuntu-based Linux. Thanks for the content, Neil." So let's dig into this a little bit. First of all, thank you very much for your support. It is always appreciated. I'm glad that we're able to help new users get started and work their way through Linux. My suggestion to you is to not dive in real heavy on C#. It's not a typical Linux language from what I'm told. Now, I'm not a developer. I don't play one on TV, but I have a lot of friends that are developers. And I am told that C# is not a language that is heavily used in Linux. So unless you want to stay in Windows, I wouldn't even bother with it. Now, there isn't anything better than monodevelop as far as I'm aware of. But here is an option for you. Microsoft, in their never-ending quest to become as good as Linux, has actually released Microsoft Visual Studio as open source, and that is available on Linux. So if all you need to do your job is Microsoft Visual Studio, you could certainly do that on Linux. But what we would suggest you do is, if you're just starting from the beginning, we always tell developers to start with Python. It's a really great language to get involved in, to get started with, but it's scale, so you can do the bigger projects. So that would be one option for you. The other option would be if you want to stick with actual machine language, then learn something like actual C. There are plenty of programs that are written in C, and as best of my knowledge, the majority of the kernel and lower level type things are all written in C. One great resource for you, because again I'm not a developer, is to join the Ask Noah Show Telegram group. That's at telegram.asknoahshow.com, and there are plenty of developers, all of which would be more than happy to help you learn whatever it is you're wanting to learn or accomplish whatever it is that you want to accomplish. And these are some really fantastic folks that have a lot more knowledge than me in a wide breadth of things. So I can help you with business stuff, the IT side, the IT admin side. Can't really help you with developer stuff, but there are people in the community that can. Now, if you're not in the Ask Noah Telegram group, this week is the week to join. We're going to have more information for you as the show goes on, but this is the week to join the Ask Noah Telegram group because you might have a chance to win some cash. Again, 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624, the email live at asknoahshow.com. Jim joins us from Virginia. Hey, Jim, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Good evening, Noah. I have two questions regarding a problem I'm having with backing up my Linux boxes to a FreeNAS server. Connected by NFS, and I can easily, from the command line, mount the necessary things and direct it to a specific symlink on each computer that puts it out to the proper directory on the FreeNAS. When I go to set that up in FS tab, Etsy FS tab, right, at least on the first machine that I'm working on, it doesn't mount. And I'm thinking, well, all right, I've got the FS tab entry wrong. But then I do a sudo mount-a, and it says, oh yeah, I see where that is, and it mounts the drive. So it's not mounting during boot up, but say a minute or two afterwards, I can do it manually. I don't know if this particular machine is connected by Wi-Fi, so maybe it's a problem with the Wi-Fi loading later than it should, or in the sequence, or NFS, or I'm not certain where to look for that problem. And then once we've talked about that, there's one other thing regarding that.
Okay. Well, let's start there. I agree with your diagnosis that it is probably the network stack is following later than when FSTab is loading. A hack-around solution, again, I'm not necessarily suggesting that you do this, but one hack-around solution that you could do is you could create a script that runs at login, and basically in that script run your mount command in there. I had to do something similar when we were building a remote broadcast unit for the radio station that I work for, and we built a custom unit that was sending this uncompressed wave RTP stream. The issue was I wasn't able to actually start the software streaming until after the network stack came up. And so I was running into a very similar issue that you were running into. And so what we ended up doing was the computer was set to automatically log in, but we just set a script to run at login that in our case started the streaming. But I would assume you could do the same thing with mounting that NFS share.
All right, with the mount command though, doesn't it need to be sudo? And if so, is that going to work in a script?
Yes, because scripts, is if they're run by cron, are executed as root, so you won't need the sudo. You won't need the sudo, so you'll be able to. And I forget the exact place. This is where I'm going to show my ignorance, but hey, this is what you get when you do a live show, right? There's a series of init scripts, and one of them. There is one specific file that you can put and where it runs at login. There's one that you can put in that runs at reboot. There's one that you can put in that runs when the computer comes out of suspend or when it goes into suspend. All of that you can trigger them at various points, and I can look up exactly where to put that script. I just don't remember right off the top of my head.
Okay, so it might be in the show notes later.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it will. Podcast.asknoahshow.com. But you said you had an additional follow-up question? Yes,
it's with 2 or more of these units running an initial backup against the server. Within the last 24 hours, the server's been basically going offline and throwing an RE0:watchdog timeout error. And seems about the only way to get out of that is to just do it alternate control delete, let the thing reboot, and then it comes back. I've done some research on it. It seems to be some issue with certain Realtek chips. This would be an on motherboard NIC, and I'm wondering if getting another NIC, like an Intel NIC or something, would fix that problem. I don't know if you've run into that error.
I have. I've never run into it with a file server, but I've run into it with a pfSense box, actually, of all things. And I always assumed that the Realtek card that we had just wasn't capable of handling the amount of traffic that we were funneling through it because it was the WAN card, and so we ended up swapping it for an Intel card, and the problem went away. But yeah, I agree with your assessment. Swapping that card, or your troubleshooting rather, swapping that card is probably the quick fix.
I don't know if there's a way to turn it off, the internal one on the motherboard, but perhaps there is in FreeNAS. I can poke around and find out and say, I want to use this interface, not that one. Of course, if there's only one cable plugged into one of them, then there's only one that the machine can use.
True.
All right, well, I think that points me the right direction on both of these problems, so thank you. I appreciate your help and really enjoy the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate the call. The thing is, as far as which card can you use, yes, you absolutely can disable the card in FreeNAS. There's a way to do that. When you plug in your keyboard, mouse, and monitor, go into the actual console side of it, and you'll get a list of options. And one of the options is configure network interfaces. And if it's like number 4 or whatever, you click it, you tap number 4, go into that. And one of the options is you'll be able to choose which network card you want to use, and you'll be able to assign the IP addresses. And so you absolutely could just totally ignore one of them or take it out of the loop, as it were, and that would work for you. Again, 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Make your voice heard, become part of the program. One other way that you can interact with us, we don't talk about it a whole lot, but you can join us in our interactive chat room. Our chat room is irc.geekshed.net, #Jupiter Broadcasting. And the nice thing about our live chat room is that the nice thing about our chat room is that you can provide feedback while we're doing the show. So I typically don't try to take many questions directly out of the chat room, simply because it's a production thing. It just doesn't sound as good if I'm reading the question. It sounds like I'm talking to myself. I read the question, I answer the question, I read the question, I answer the question. So we prefer that you give us a call at our toll-free number, 1-855-450-NOAH. But you can add your voice to the conversation. You can provide feedback. I take information from the chat room all the time. If I've got a question wrong, or maybe I need some more information, a lot of times, and I've gotten people lovingly poke fun at me, but I will be doing a show and somebody will see the answer come across the chat room, and then I will read it as if I knew that answer. And of course, you watch the video version that is published on YouTube, then you see me do this, and it kind of takes some of the magic out of it. But it's a really fun community, somewhat, I think, undervalued. I don't think we value the chat room the way that we probably should, and so I just want to make a plug to join us, irc.geekshed.net, #Jupiter Broadcasting, or in our interactive Telegram group. That discussion goes on all week. We have discussions about all sorts of things, one of which we're going to get to later on in the hour today. We're talking about IP cameras a couple of weeks ago, and did some investigating and had some challenges that I wanted to overcome with the Unify system, because as some of you may have known, or as you've played with the Unify system, it previously was not possible to simply have a live camera feed. You had to go in individual individual cameras and choose which camera you wanted to see, or you had to just momentarily view an entire split screen view and refresh that every time. If you tried to just leave it up, the feed would get stale and it would eventually lag behind hours and hours and hours and eventually days. It wasn't a great system, but we have that fixed. That answer coming up later in the hour. Again, 1-855-450-NO, 855-450-6624. Your calls go to the front of the line. Steve joins us from Canada. Hey, Steve, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah, how are you?
Excellent, sir. How can we help?
Well, I had a couple of things. I was listening to your last caller. I dropped you a link to the ArchWiki in Telegram. He was talking about NFS. The way to get around his problem is to use the systemd NFS mount inside of the FS tab, which will do checks like, is my network up and can I ping the end thing? And if it can't, as soon as he accesses it and the network comes online, so if he's mounting /MMP, for example, and he does like an ls into that directory with the systemd mount, it will then try and mount it on demand, kind of similar to AutoFS. So it gives you kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay, awesome. And you think that might be the answer?
Well, because he was saying, like, it sounded like what you both thought, that there was some sort of network lag with the Wi-Fi coming up and not being able to mount the NFS mount properly in the FS tab, but when he does it on the command line, it would work. So it sounds to me like it's trying to do the mount before the network is finally ready.
Oh, awesome. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I kind of assumed it was something like that. It's just, not having seen it, not having hands-on. Yes, that's the advantage. So I think I have an idea of who you are, Steve, and that's kind of the advantage in what you do in your job, right? You have the ability to go in, and that's what Red Hat pays you to do, is you go in and on the fly figure out these systems, then figure out these things and provide solutions for Red Hat customers.
Yeah, yep, that's exactly it. I had a comment about his network thing, and I also had a question for you. So I also have experienced exactly what he was talking about, the Watchdog timeout, where it basically brings the entire box down. It seems to be an issue with FreeBSD, which is both what pfSense and what FreeNAS are both based on. I've experienced that both myself, and there's only a couple of ways to kind of fiddle around with that. You can make it better by fooling around with some of the FreeBSD internals, or you swap out the network card and turn the other one off.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, Steve, I really appreciate the call. Thanks for chiming in. I really appreciate it, and I believe that actually, let's do this because the technology has the capability of doing this. Let's just go back. Jim, are you still on the phone with me? I see that you're still in our call queue.
Yes, I was listening to what he said.
Does that give you some additional insight?
Well, it does give me insight on the network card, and I'll have to look at whatever link he sent you to understand the other. But it sounds like everything else in Linux, you just change something in a text file, and we should be good to go.
Perfect, outstanding. I thank you both. I thank you both for the call again. 1-855-450-NO, 855-450-6624. The email live@asknoahshow.com. This is a perfect example of why the Ask Noah Show community is powerful, because one person here and one person there, we can connect them, and Steve has the answer to Jim, and so we're happy to facilitate that. And so I thank you both for calling in and for listening live, because you guys wouldn't be able to we wouldn't be able to do this if this wasn't live. And I know the vast majority of you listen to the show offline, but we definitely appreciate those of you who take the time, take the questions online. Again, 1-855-450-NO, 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Make your voice heard, become a part of the program. So I want to dive into this article that comes to us from TechCrunch. And the article is Common Clause Stops Open Source Abuse. And it's this idea that the way that you license code, that we can come up with a way to license code anyway, that would stop people from abusing open source. The article says, the Common Clause was announced recently along with several projects moving portions of their codebase under it. It's an additional restriction intended to be applied to existing open source license and affecting or preventing the work from being used or sold, where the definition of sold includes being used as a component for an online pay-for-service. As described in the FAQ, this change affects the license of the work from an open source license to an to a source available license rather. However, the site does not go into a great amount of detail as to why you'd want to do that. Fortunately, one of the VCs behind the move wrote an opinion article that goes into more detail. The central argument is that Amazon makes use of a great deal of open source software and integrates it into their commercial products. And these products are incredibly lucrative, but they give little back to the community. By adopting this common clause, Amazon will be forced to negotiate with the projects under being able to use the covered versions of the software. This will apparently prevent behavior that is not conducive to sustaining open source communities. But this is where things get somewhat confusing, the author continues. Our view is that open source was never intended to be for cloud infrastructures, and wasn't designed for companies to take and sell. This is not the original ethos of open source, which is a pretty astonishingly unsupported argument. Open source code has been incorporated into proprietary applications without giving back to the originating community since before the term open source even existed. MIT licensed X11 became part of not only multiple Unixes, but a variety of proprietary commercial products for non-Unix platforms. Large portion of BSD ended up in a range of proprietary operating systems, including older versions of Windows. The only argument in favor of this assertion is that cloud infrastructure companies didn't exist at all at that point in time, and so they weren't taken into consideration. But no argument is made as to why cloud infrastructure companies are fundamentally different to proprietary operating systems in this respect. Both took open source code and incorporated it into their products, sold without, in most cases, giving any credit or anything back. This has some interesting implications, right? Because this discussion starts here in that there is always a fine line between freedom and abuse. When you write code, when you give of your time and effort, you have to make a decision. Are you going to err on the side of freedom, or are you going to err on the side of abuse? Because we can take a side and say, listen, we need to license this code for maximum absence of coercion, something that in theory I'm very much in support of. The problem is you're always going to get that one person or those two people or that group of people or that large company that is going to take your handiwork and they are going to abuse it, essentially. They're going to take it, they're going to use it for their own purposes, and they could care less if they leave you in the dust. And it goes back to the age-old argument of the MIT license versus the GPL. If I were to bring Alan Jude on this program, he would tell you that the MIT license, the BSD license, those kinds of very, very liberal, those very, very unrestrictive license, I guess I should say, are superior to the GPL. Whereas I might say that the GPL and the protection that the GPL offers to the open source developers is vastly superior. And so fundamentally, this affects open source because it fundamentally prevents open source from getting ahead. So we sort of sabotage our own platform. There is no question that software written in open source will ever really truly have a superior advantage over proprietary alternatives, except for transparency and security. Because any feature that is fantastic and vastly superior to that of its proprietary alternative can simply be taken from the open source product and leveraged into a proprietary alternative. One great example of that just recently happened is APFS, right? Apple's file system sucked. And so their answer was to go find the best file system that was out there, which is basically ZFS, and take the parts that they liked, or rip off the parts that they liked and include it into their proprietary piece of garbage OS. And we have seen that happen time and time again. And the fundamental problem that we keep running into with this is that you're never going to have a piece of software that can only exist on Linux. And as a person who works very, very hard to convert people to Linux, to get people to try out Linux, to check it out, a lot of the most amazing software we have, things like Inkscape, things like, OBS, for example, things like VLC. These are fantastic, well-coded, amazing pieces of software. But these pieces of software, these things, do not exist or cannot exist exclusively on Linux, because anybody can take that source and they can take it over to Windows, they can port it to Windows, they can port it to Mac OS, and it works. And there's nothing in place to stop them. So my initial reaction when I read this article, and we're going to have this article as well as a couple of other related pieces linked for you in the show notes. These things, my initial gut reaction is that this is a bad thing. That the idea of going from true open source to source available is a bad thing. Remember, it wasn't just a couple of weeks, just a couple of months ago that we covered a story from Copperhead OS. And their decision to not trust the community, their decision to not release the code as true GPL open source, but to simply make it source available. That decision ultimately ended the Copperhead OS project. Okay? So my gut reaction is to say we need to follow through on our principles. But after I had some time to think about it, after I was kind of mowing over this article, the more I think about it, the more I do believe that there is some place, and I don't know where to draw this line. And if you want to add your feedback, you can at live@asknoahshow.com or 1-855-450-NOAH. I'd love to get somebody else's take on this. I'm not sure where exactly we draw the line between keeping people's hands totally out of the pot and letting anybody who wants to leverage the software do what they want, because at the end of the day, that's what maximum absence from coercion is, or if there's an appropriate place to drill down just a little bit and say, okay, you can't do that. You got to give back a little bit to the community, either monetarily or credit-wise, but you can't just rip off the best parts of what we have, turn it into your own thing, and then compete with us to put us out of business. And by out of business, I just mean, cease to exist as a project, because it's not like people are making hundreds of millions of dollars. You got to have a pretty savvy mind to frame that. But by its very nature, open source cannot and will not ever be unique to Linux. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying it deserves some consideration. And so when organizations like the Common Clause come out, commonclause.com, we'll have that link for you in the show notes. When stuff like this comes out, I just wanted to play devil's advocate for a little bit and bring a slightly different twist, a slightly different side. Because I'm not entirely decided on this, and again, I'm open to bringing this up again on the program or getting some people that maybe dive into licensing a little bit deeper than I have. Those are kind of my shower thoughts on it. Again, 1-855-450-NOAH, it's 855-450-6624, or you can email us, live@asknoahshow.com. Steve writes in and says, "Hi, Noah, I'm considering building out my in-laws' home network to deal with their things that live on a flat network. Currently, I have pfSense as the router. I'm looking for some recommendations on how to deal with this, and if you could talk to me about good mesh network or access points to cover my 3-story house with terrible Wi-Fi penetration as well, I would appreciate it. Love the show and look forward to working with you in the future." Well, Steve, the short answer to your question is that mesh networking is inherently inefficient. Anytime you take one thing and try to connect it to a bunch of other things and have all of those things connected to everything, you lose efficiency. So it's definitely not my first choice. The best option is to try to get wiring to each floor. Now, that may not always be possible, especially in older houses. Definitely may not be possible. But in a Western construction home, almost always what you can do is go either to the attic, which is usually not finished, and you can go over to where in between the wall studs, where the sheetrock, in between the sheetrocks between the rooms, and it's usually open space as long as it's not an exterior wall that has insulation in it, and you can drop a cable into it. And so what we'll do, if we go into a house, even if it's an older house, we will run 2 pieces of 2-inch conduit all the way from the basement, all the way into the attic. And then from there, we will drop wires down into all of the places that we need to have wires. And that's how we'll get wires. We've done a house as old as 1903, and we were able to get an efficiently wired house. So that's option 1. If you can get that to work, that's option A. Now, there's always going to be an exception, right? There's always that one house that either the attic is finished and they turned it into a bedroom or something like that. There's always some reason where that's just not an option. So if that's not an option for you and you absolutely insist on going with mesh networking, then here's my recommendation. My recommendation for mesh networking would be to use the Ubiquiti systems. And so what you can do with Ubiquiti is you can set up one access point to essentially act as a sender and one access point to act as a receiver. And so it's a point-to-point connection. And once you've established that, now you have, it's not a mesh network per se, but what you have is you have an RF link. And so let's say you need to go from, let's say you put a switch on all 3 floors. And at the basement, you have your router. So I've got my router and an RF link basement to RF link first floor to RF link second floor to RF link third floor to RF link fourth floor, so on and so forth, right? And we can link each one of those floors and have a switch in the, in between. So I've got, one access point connecting up, one access point connecting down. And you can effectively build a fairly efficient network using a wireless option. The problem that you're going to run into is anytime you try to put 2 access points, in my experience, it needs to be 20 dB or more of separation, which equates to about 25 to 50 feet, depending on if it's an open room or there's walls in between. Anytime you try to put access points closer to that, then that, you start to run into them interfering with each other. And that makes it difficult for you to, again, have an efficient network, which is why I say, if you can get away with it, really, really, really try to do wires. Naylor in the chat room says, what is that device that you use to put wires in the wall with the roller management? So I'm assuming he's talking about, I have a little magnetic device. And what it does is you take a cable and you insert it into this device. You drill a small little hole in the wall, and you put the wire in the wall. And this device is a big, thick piece of metal. And then there's a magnet that goes on the outside of the wall. You put it over the sheetrock. The magnet then touches to this little cable puller device thing, and you roll it up the wall, and it drags the cable with it. And I've never used it to go between floors. I've usually used it to patch between, like we've got an outlet at the bottom and we need to put another Cat5 jack up top or something like that. I've used it to snake wires that way. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but that is a device that exists out there. And there's all sorts of gimmicks, and we could go on for days and talk about which ones work and which ones don't. In my experience, I'm remodeling my house, for example, and what I chose to do was I just unzipped about a 2-foot section of wall all the way around each room, just cut out a 2-foot piece of section of sheetrock, and that allows me enough hand space to get a drill in there and drill through the floor, snake wires up and down, put sheetrock back over it, and then just mud tape and repatch it. If it was my house, that's what I would do. I would, not only would I run wire, but I would also I'd replace the electrical and all of that kind of thing. So that's a really long answer to what you're asking, but hopefully that helps you. Again, open phones this hour, 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Make your voice heard. Become part of the program. Life is Strange. The gaming porting company Furl Interactive has revealed their award-winning title, which will be released on Linux and macOS on September 13th. That's 2 days from now. Developed by Deck 9, the game was released by Square Enix for the Xbox One, PS4, and Windows back in 2017. In all three episodes are coming to Linux and Mac as part of a deluxe edition, which will also contain a bonus episode and an outfit pack. Praised for its music, we are pleased to hear that the Linux version retains some of the indie cool soundtrack, which includes the original score by British indie band Daughter. Although part of the 2015 BAFTA award, Life is Strange, the series, you won't need to have played the first game in order to enjoy the ones that are coming, such as Before the Storm, as a standalone story set before the events of the first game. It features a branching story with multiple possibilities and endings, all informed by the decisions taken. So I'm not a gamer, and I don't play a lot of games, but every gamer that I know, particularly the ones that do all of their gaming on Linux, are freaking out over this Life is Strange game that is coming to Linux. So on September 13th, I will be purchasing the new version of Life is Strange. I will be playing it for the rest of the week, and then I'm going to come back and let you know what I think. I got into Factorio, and it pretty much destroyed my life because it is such an addicting game, it's ridiculous. Factorio is one of those games where it's kind of like Minecraft, where the basic premise is pretty simple. I can teach anybody to play it in 30 seconds. You start out by, I'm going to mine some copper, I'm going to mine some, steel or whatever, right? And then very quickly you turn into, I could mine it, or I could put it onto this conveyor belt and move this around so it mines itself. But wait, it gets better because I could power my steam engine and then this thing could happen automatically. And pretty soon you start building out this elaborate system, and you look up and you've just sunk like 3 days into this game. And from what I am told from the people that have played the Life is Strange series, is that's the kind of game that you just get sucked into and it just envelops your entire life and you have to hold on to it. So I'm going to check it out. And of course, as soon as I mention it, the major in the chat room tells me Life is Strange is an amazing series. Absolutely something you have to look into. So Pro One feed says, sounds like having a home lab. Yep, exactly. So Life is Strange. We're going to check that out. And if you have any thoughts on games that I should check out, also give me a heads up. Again, 1-855-450-NOAH, or email us live at AskNoahShow.com. There was an article that came out in Forbes, and this I think is going to be the third article that we've taken from Forbes on this show. Turns out Linux is making a very big penetration into the world of business people that just want to get stuff done. And they don't have any allegiance to open source or Linux specifically. They just want to use cool stuff that works. And what they're finding is that Linux is that solution. So again, Forbes.com, Elementary OS First Impressions, a simple, beautiful doorway to Linux. As part of my journey into the expansive and exciting world of Linux desktops, I've been engaging in a behavior known as distro hopping. I'm sure that many Linux users have their personal reasons for doing this, but for me it's fueled by equal parts of curiosity and knowledge hunting. So recently, I left the comfortable embrace of Ubuntu to discover the different Linux philosophies and approaches of developers having designed a Linux OS. My first steps were of Elementary OS Loki. Elementary OS describes itself as fast and open, a replacement for Mac OS and Windows. And while most Linux distributions are fast and open alternatives to the mainstream desktops, such as Apple and Microsoft, only one of them will set users to feel completely at home with Elementary OS. Before we dive in, let me present a disclaimer. At the time of this writing, I have used Linux for about 9 weeks. There is in no way a professional review or experience critique of Elementary OS. Instead, this is the first impressions of someone who is absolutely still a Linux rookie. I'm seeking my own one true distribution, which is incredibly subjective and personal, but also taking highlights, observations in order to recommend distros to other people based on their needs and preferences. Visually, Elementary OS is stunning. It's crisp, it's highly readable, and it's intuitive. That's probably more than a few design cues that were inspired by Apple. From the center dock at the bottom, with the screen with the frequently used apps, to the menus and photos of music software, all the way around to the file manager down to the core, Elementary is courting macOS users with its elegant design Pantheon desktop, which embraces minimalism and is seriously one of the most pleasing user interfaces I have ever seen in the Linux world. Guys, I don't know if you realize how huge stuff like this is. When you have people that are writing for places like Forbes, and this guy, and I've kind of done a little bit of digging into Jason Evan, I think it's Evan Glow. He is not, he's a self-admitted not Linux expert. He's just a guy that needs to be able to get his work done. He's just a writer and needs to be able to get his work done. And as he starts using Linux, it starts to captivate him. And he starts to get addicted to the stability and the security and the reliability that he has, that he's come to expect from Linux. And then the more he plays, the more he finds that there is to play. And I watched this firsthand. Some of you know that I've gotten to be pretty good friends with a guy who is starting another show called The Schmidt Show, Brad Schmidt. And we had him on the program when he first launched his podcast, and which is doing great. And you can check that out at podcast.theschmidtshow.com. But I didn't really start to talk to him about technology. Really, our shared interest was in politics and in guns, essentially. Those are kind of the two things that him and I kind of centered around. But as we kind of got to know each other, and as he started to spend some time here in the Ask Noah studio, and he would use one of my computers or my laptop or whatever, he started to fall in love with Linux, and he started to find the limitations that he had in Mac OS. And so as we started kind of digging into that, I had joked with him. I was honestly, it really was just a joke. I just said, yeah, within a couple of days, you're going to switch to Linux. And I kid you not, The Friday, I made that joke on Tuesday. By Friday, less than 1 week of being around Linux stuff, again, no pressure. I didn't ask. I didn't offer none of that. By Friday, he said, how hard would it be to install Linux on my MacBook? And I kind of jokingly responded. I said, I was just giving you a hard time on the air. I wasn't actually meaning that we were going to take your laptop and install Linux by Friday. And he goes, yeah, well, I've just kind of seen how it works, and I feel like I could get a lot more life out of that MacBook. And so he's got an old Core 2 Duo. So we took his MacBook and tried to install Ubuntu proper on it. Didn't work. Went back and decided we were going to try to install I think the second one we did was, the first one we did was Kubuntu. Tried to get KDE to work. KDE would just load to a black screen, wouldn't load any further. Tried all the troubleshooting things I could think of, got some of the people from the KDE project involved, couldn't get it to work, bailed on it. Went to Ubuntu proper, Ubuntu with GNOME. Tried to get that to work. Again, colossal failure, didn't really work, couldn't get anything to work right, bailed on that. Finally went to Elementary OS. Put the USB flash drive in, booted off of it, installed, everything worked out of the box. Everything looked fantastic. Everything was recognized. Now, there was an issue with the Wi-Fi card, but that is an issue with that particular model of Broadcom card and is nothing that anybody can do anything about, and is very well documented. You either replace the Broadcom card or you deal with the fact that about 25% of the time when it comes out of standby, it just doesn't connect to Wi-Fi networks. The guy was blown away, and this is with the problematic Wi-Fi card. He didn't actually end up replacing it. It was good enough for him. And so he started using it, and watching that experience and watching his reaction with a machine that is 10 years old, maybe a little bit more, with an operating system that doesn't even perform to its true potential, right? Because I was very, very nervous when I handed it back to him. And I actually told him, I said, listen, I don't think you should use Linux. I think you should just stick on Mac OS until we can get you a different machine that's going to run Linux more efficiently, because this is one of those things that I'm just uncomfortable with it. It's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth, and then you're going to start not liking Linux. And it's really just this one particular problem that, we can do something about. And he said, no, that's fine. I like it that much, and it works that much better. And I just want to keep using it. And so he has, and he's been using it for the past couple of weeks. And so that really started to open my eyes to how unhappy and uncomfortable people really are with proprietary operating systems, with standard proprietary operating systems. They want something more. They want something different. And so as I'm watching these general writers, not even necessarily Linux tech writers, just these general people that are interested in technology, as I'm watching these guys go to town, and one thing after the other, every time they try something, they seem to routinely wind up on Linux. And as I continue to watch Apple make a colossal mess out of their brand and Microsoft kind of follow suit, I can't help but think that we are in a very exciting time for the Linux desktop. Again, this article, as well as a couple of others, will all be linked in the show notes. We ask you to head over to podcast.asknoahshow.com. Check them out there. They'll be in the show notes for you, and you can read them all yourself. It's fascinating write-up, and we actually have a request into Jason to see if we can get him on the program. So I would like to talk to him directly and ask him some of these difficult questions, because I think it will give us all some insight into what the average user is looking at for Linux and what we can do as the community to welcome those people in with open arms. Again, the phone lines are open, 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email live at AskNoahShow.com. Make your voice heard, become a part of the program. James calls from Idaho. Hey, James, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah, I'm playing around with Mint 19. Here's my problem. They got Firefox in it, which okay, but no way to add Google as a search. You get Yahoo or DuckDuckGo.
You are the second person to. You are the second person to
figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, you're the second person to ask me this question this week. We actually had a work order about this earlier this week too, and I thought the guy was making it up the first time. He says I just can't add Google back to Firefox when you go into the preference, and sure enough, it's not there. I haven't really. I hate to tell you this. I haven't really landed on an answer on how that has what happened. I mean, I know that Firefox had, their outings with Google and stuff, and that they dropped them as the default, provider, and there's a whole big mess involved with that. But there's always just been, you go into the preferences, you click on search, one-click search engines, and you check Google, and it's there. And that option seems to be, and then there's the default search option. and that option seems to have been removed sometime recently. I have it on still my Arch, the one Arch machine that I have still has the ability to do Google even with the latest updates. I checked, and on my laptop here, let me just check. Let's see what exact version I'm running here. So on my laptop, I have version, is it 61? 61-0.01, and that does not seem to have it, or it does not seem to have that issue. I seem to have Google. So I'm not sure what Mint, I've gotten onto this a little bit, touched on this a little bit on the air. Mint is not my favorite distribution. Any particular reason you're using Mint to begin with?
Can't seem to find a way to get the Cinnamon desktop to work real well with Ubuntu, regular Ubuntu.
Okay.
Desktops piss me off.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's one of those things. I wish I had a better answer for you, James. What I would suggest is perhaps maybe trying to look to see if there's an original download for. Actually, we can do that. We can have somebody look that up for you. But if we can find an original, like the direct install for Firefox, perhaps they are shipping a different version of Firefox that has that restricted. JJ4884 in the chat room says, click on Find More Search Engines. So I don't know if that's an option either. But we'll take a look at that and see if I can dig into it, because I have a feeling this is a bigger issue coming, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, as it were. Again, open phones this hour, 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. We have talked a lot about Ubiquiti and Unify products. I absolutely love the line. I love the company. They make a truly fantastic, high-quality, enterprise-grade product that does not require cloud service, that you can configure and own by yourself. It is the only access point I will use, the access point that is in my house, the access point that is here at the Ask Noah Show studio, the access point that is at Jupiter Broadcasting. Absolutely the only equipment I will use. It's absolutely fantastic. Except for routers, we tend to go with Microtech. They have released, or have for some time, had out one of probably the best IP camera solutions out there. For the longest time, I shied away from the Ubiquiti system because it wasn't an open standard. The cameras do stream RTSP, and so obviously you can add those cameras into something like ZoneMinder or Blue Cherry DVR. But the NVR themselves, that's their brand for their DVR, their NVR only works with their Unify cameras. And if you buy the NVR, then it offers you a tremendous amount of management potential. So we were remodeling our house, and it came time that I had to choose a camera system. I couldn't put it off any longer, and so I did end up purchasing a Unify system. And we've installed them for clients a couple of times, but this is my first experience using it day to day. And obviously, in my privacy-conscious centered, mind, I made some decisions that a lot of other people probably wouldn't make because it's a little bit paranoid. But it has worked out very well. So first of all, the thing that I really liked about the NVR, it ships with basically stock Debian. And there's just a PPA that is added and the installation of the NVR software. So all of your data is being stored on a true Linux Debian system, which I was happy about. The other thing that I was really happy about is it's not required to actually purchase their NVR. They offer, you can add that PPA to any computer, and they actually support you doing this installed on any machine. So we are bidding out a very, very large camera installation. And it's something that we're actually going to fly a team in here. We've got people that work all over the United States, and we're bringing them all in. It's going to be all hands on deck for a couple of weeks to get this project knocked out. And because it's such a large installation, we need a multi-server environment to store all of this 1080p 30 frame per second footage. And as I was building it out, I was talking to folks at Ubiquiti and said, hey, this is what we're kind of up against, and what would you recommend? They said, yeah, you can absolutely use, Dell R series servers and load them up with storage disks, load them up with Western Digital, Reds, which now come in a 10 terabyte version, which I'm excited to try. And you can stock those things up, and it'll absolutely work. And so we're going to build out a storage infrastructure. Then we're going to have a dedicated server to do the actual compositing of all of the RTSP feeds and putting them into a split screen and all of that. So it scales to massive levels. And I have worked on $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 just for the DVR, plus these high-end Sony or Bosch pan tilt zoom cameras. I have worked with all of them, and I can honestly say the Unify system, other than not offering a PTZ camera, which is the only critique I really have for them, is an absolute stellar enterprise system. What I have done, what they suggest you do is that you just put it on your LAN and forward a port, and each camera creates an encrypted stream, encrypted TSP stream back to the NVR. And then that NVR consolidates all of those feeds and creates an encrypted tunnel out to every monitoring device. So whether you're viewing it in the mobile app, or if you're viewing it in an HTTPS browser, whatever you want to do. And of course, you can enable or disable any of those features. So if you didn't want it to be able to go out over a browser, you can disable that features to not have that security risk. And so everything from end to end is entirely encrypted. And I like that. It's still not good enough for me, because at the end of the day, with enough computing power and enough time, you can break any sort of encryption, right? And so what I did in my house is I set up an RTSP, I set up a separate LAN completely, a separate switch, not just a VLAN, an entirely separate switch. And I color-coded the patch cables as they come into the patch panel and ran them into a separate PoE switch, and that became the NVR switch. And then those connections are hardwired up to what I'm calling the monitoring stations that are all over the house. Well, one key feature was missing, and that was that in our old house, the way that we did our camera feeds was we ran them into a RF modulator, which is a device that essentially creates your own TV channel. And then we ran that into our house cable TV system. And so the idea was that you could go into any TV at the house and pull up channel 118, and it would show you what the camera feed for the house was. So I originally tried to do something like that by just having a computer that was pulled up to the web page, and then I outputted that as, HDMI, put that into an RF modulator, and it worked for about the first 2 hours. And then slowly over time, that camera feed would get more and more delayed and further behind. And eventually what I ended up doing was saying, okay, well, that's not going to work. I guess I just have to deal with pulling those cameras up on demand. Turns out the Ubiquiti community is amazing and has solved this problem. And so they have a piece of software that is available for you to you essentially just take this piece of software and run it on a Raspberry Pi, and it creates a split-screen camera feed with a dedicated output. So I ran that on a Raspberry Pi, inserted that into my RF modulator, and now I have that feature back. And so on any TV in the house, I can pull it up. Don't have to worry about the security concerns because it's physically separated from the rest of the network. It runs over Cat5 cables. It is technically encoded over IP, but there's no way to get to that. It's a closed network. There's no way to get to that system from outside of the house. And of course, if I ever leave the house and say I do actually want to be able to access it, well, now I have the ability to just grab a little patch cable, go from my network or my security camera network to my main network, pull it up, and it's good to go. And so I just wanted to give a plug to Ubiquiti Projects. If you haven't checked them out, do so. And we're going to give you an opportunity to do that coming up in an Ask Noah Show drawing that's going to take place in just a little bit. The Telegram group, as I've talked about a couple different times, community is huge to us at the Ask Noah community, at the Ask Noah Show. We love building communities. We love working with communities, whether it's the Jupiter Broadcasting community or the Southeast Linux Fest community. We love working with communities. We love building those relationships. And I think those human relationships are arguably more important than any of the actual tech. And so one of the things that we are going to do is we're constantly trying to add value to our Telegram group, telegram.asknoahshow.com. We're constantly trying to add value to it. We're constantly trying to make it a welcoming environment for people to get started with Linux. And so we're going to do, it's time, I'm told anyway, by our production team, it's time to do another giveaway. And so details are coming up in just a few moments. Again, your calls, as always, go to the front of the line, 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. Send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. Aaron joins us from Canada. Hey, Aaron, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, I have a solution for the person who had the problem with Linux Mint not offering Google as the Firefox search engine.
Okay, awesome.
It's because Google, by default, Linux Mint only offers search engines in Firefox that give them revenue. So, by default, they modify Firefox to disable the Google stuff. So they offer a page where you can add to Google manually.
Okay.
And it's you would in Firefox settings, you would go to find more search engines or something like that, and it would display a page on Linux Mint's website, and you can add Google manually there. The reason it's kind of weird that they disable it, but yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Aaron, for coming forward with that solution. Again, this has been a great show to exemplify the importance of community, right? Because I may host the show, but I don't have all the answers. And so there's always somebody out there that's smarter than me. The audience as a collective is smarter than me. And so Aaron in Canada, you're the guy that has this particular answer. And we're gonna put a special thing in the show notes to detail this answer, because like I say, I think this is the tip of the iceberg, because this is the second time this week I've come across this problem.
Okay.
Well,
thanks, Noah.
Yeah, thank you very much for calling in. We really appreciate it, Aaron. Again, 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email live at AskNoahShow.com. Just a couple minutes left in the hour. I see a call just came in here. I'm going to go straight to the air because we don't have a lot of time. Hey, caller, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hello. I currently have a Windows Media server with about 8 terabytes worth of media. Is there any way to transfer that over to, let's say, Ubuntu server without moving all 8 terabytes to another 8 terabytes of hard drives and then moving it back once it becomes ext4?
Yes, there is. However, it's much easier to do it that way. Is your only reason to not move? Is there only reason to not move it because you don't have a spare two 4 terabyte drives to store your media on while you make the transition?
The 8 terabytes is a 6 and 2 1s that are JBODed. So yeah,
Gotcha.
Yes, I don't have another 8.
How about this? If I were to put you back on hold and I'll have my call screener pick up and take some of your information, what if we were to just send you 2 4 terabyte drives that you could use to move your media off? You could reset up your server however you want, and then you can move the media back on.
That would be amazing.
I'm in a generous mood. We're going to do that. I'll put you back on hold. I didn't even get your name, but Sarah will take it. She's our call screener. She does a great job with things like that. I'll put you back on hold. She'll pick up. She'll take all of your, she'll get all of your particulars down, as it were. And then I'm just sending a message to her. So she'll pick up. She'll get all of your information. Then what we'll do is we'll just ship you out 2 4 terabyte drives. We stock the Western Digital Reds, and so it's no big deal for me to send those out to you. You can use them and then deban them, or if it's not private, then don't worry about it. Maybe you do this: encrypt them with Lux, because even I can't get into Lux. Encrypt them with Lux, copy all of your data over to it, reset up the server however you want, move your data back, and then just destroy the encryption key, and that'll be the end of your the ability to access those drives. Again, 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email live at AskNoahShow.com. So, the giveaway. We tweeted about this. I actually learned about this giveaway on Twitter. Our team tweeted about it earlier today, and then I asked for some details and got filled in on the way over to the studio to do the show. So the way this giveaway is going to work, we have done a giveaway in the past where we try to give things away to the people that are a part of the Ask Noah Show community. Now, I'm proud to say that the Telegram group is probably one of the largest Linux communities on Telegram. There we got hundreds and hundreds of members in there, and we want to get to 1,000. But when we get to our next 100, which would be 800, when we get to 800 members, we are going to give an $80 Amazon gift card away. Now, when we get so the 800th member will receive an $80 gift card from Amazon. However, so that's cool, but here's what it gets even better. It's not fair to me to give the 800th person a gift card and not give the people that have been in the group the entire time a chance to win something too, right? So the way we're going to do this is, and you can audit the code. We'll have a link to in the show notes. You can audit the code. It's an automated computer process, open source code. It will flag whoever the 800th person is that joins the Ask Noah Telegram group. It will send me that information. And then what it will do is randomly pick a person that already exists in the Telegram group. That person, the person who was randomly chose, will win a $160 gift certificate. And those Unify G3 cameras, yeah, they're about $150. Coincidence? I think not. Did you know this show is available as a downloadable podcast? To subscribe to the feed or download the latest episode, visit podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll find not only the latest episode, but all of the articles and materials referenced in this episode. You can get the latest, of course, by following us on Twitter at AskNoahShow. The Ask Noah Show continues next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. A huge thanks to Vox Telesis for providing our phone systems, Ben, our producer, and Sarah, our call screener. This hour of the show may be over, but there's plenty of more content for you 24/7 at AskNoahShow.com.